South Central Los Angeles Death Trip, 1982 by Wanda Coleman. South Central Los Angeles Death Trip, 1982. 1. Just another ex marking it. Dangling gold chains and pinky rings. 19. Done in black leather and defiance. Teeth white as halogen lamps. Skin dark as a threat. They spotted him taking in the night. Made for the roust. Arrested him on suspicion of, they say he became violent. They say he became combative in the rear seat of the sleek zebra Maria. They say it took a chokehold to restrain him. And they say he died of asphyxiation on the spot. Summarized in the coroner's report as the demise of one more nondescript dustbunny, ripped on PCP, which justified their need to leave his hands cuffed behind his back long after rigor mortis set in. 2. Stress had damaged his 39-year-old mind more than he could admit, but he was trying to make life work as well as it could for a father with 3 children, praying Dad will pull through. Where the butchered knife came from, no one's sure. They say he held off 10 riot squad patrol cars for 45 minutes outside the 109th Street church. They say the cops had stopped him because they didn't like his looks. They say something fragile inside his head snapped. They say it took 20 rounds of ammo to bring him down, and they say it took 5 gunshot pellets and 13 bullets. They say that was a lot of outrage over a case of misconstrued identity. 3. She was fed up that day with everything. Now here they come turning off the damn gas, so she went out and chased the service rep from the yard before he could carry out the disconnection order. By the time police officers arrived, she had lost what was left of her common sense, had grabbed up and brandished an 11-inch boning knife to back up her mouth. The 2 officers complained. She threw the knife at them, and they were so terrified they didn't consider a wounding. They simply emptied both guns into the 39-year-old hefty female. It took 12 shots just to do all that. Trita this and white son of a bitch that, they said, and kill it. 4. Strangely, he was dodging and ducking, bouncing and rolling, tipping and slipping, as if dangling from the end of it, in and out of traffic in front of the sheriff's station, embarrassing them, causing a modest jam for no apparent reason. Therefore, they arrested the 26-year-old descendant of slaves and booked him for this queer behavior. Their spokesman said because there weren't enough terrorists, assassins, or irate taxpayers to keep him busy that Wednesday afternoon. He was handcuffed and left alone in his cell and fell inexplicably into unconsciousness in a mere 3 hours, they said. He was rushed to a nearby hospital still in cuffs where he died within 22 minutes. Cause of demise as unknown as ever. Five. Without evidence to support the superstition, they swore the 21-year-old consumer was involved in the robbery of the popular Manchester Avenue chicken shack, and not just another hungry but innocent bystander. He was assumed guilty, if not the brainiac, perhaps the getaway driver. He was captured during the fray before questions could be asked or players and slayers identified. That he was unarmed was not a pertinent issue. That he was ignorant decidedly was. They handcuffed him and made him lay on the ground in the middle of the fray where, unfortunately, his ignorance got him killed by police officer gunfire. They say an officer yelled, "Freeze!" and this unexperienced young black hoodlum, being unfamiliar with the procedure of how one freezes while being held face down on the sidewalk, hands cuffed behind one's back, could not do so. Therefore, the inability to freeze under these conditions cost him his life. Six. Exhausted after working the night shift, he was so dead on his feet he couldn't hear him ramming in his door, so they broke into the sepia-toned man's apartment by mistake. It was supposed to be the one downstairs. Officers swarmed his bed as he opened his eyes. Officers were on him like maggots on foul meat. Nevertheless, he managed to free himself long enough to run into the bathroom where he was ultimately subdued without ever knowing why. The coroner reported this as death due to heart attack, brought on by advanced osteosclerosis in a 28-year-old black male. 7. He was bound for college but was caught standing on a street corner block from home. Maybe they say he had recently scored some dope which could not be found. Or maybe minutes earlier he'd been snacking on that ham sandwich Mama made for her 19-year-old sure as handsome, fine young black man. Maybe there was nothing to it at all. Not even that missing piece of aluminum foil the officers claimed they saw him pull out of his trousers, sudden-like, as they happened to be cruising past. It made a mysterious metallic gleam, which they mistook for the glint of steel, which is why there was all that drawn fire, which is why Mama went to his funeral instead of his graduation. 8. All of 26, the ebony diabetic had no steady job and lived with his parents. He was a young man whose mental and physical problems. He began to act strangely, they say, although no one noticed him brandishing that piece of radiator fan belt or that kitchen knife in the middle of the street. Perhaps some car somewhere had broken down. Certainly, he had enough to make the sheriff's deputies approach with caution and order him to freeze. He turned toward them, and even though he was 14 feet away from them, his turning toward them inspired so much fear into the armed men. One of them emptied his Smith & Wesson service revolver into the young diabetic, who died from 3 slugs. 9. That night Bob came blamming on her door. She had just gotten home from working the register at the club. Her feet were killing her. Now here comes some numbskull saying his name is Bob, knocking on the damn door. In with some okey dokey about, "Here comes the police, hide me quick." So she got something for Bob's jive, probably drunk ass. That 22 caliber rifle she uses regularly to scare off the riffraff. Then she cracked the door a taste. Before she could make her melodrama move, it slammed open, and she was blinded by the flash as she took a shot to her left breast. The bullet entered her right rib cage and killed the 11-and-a-half-month-old baby she was carrying. All this supposed to be drug bust, where no drugs were found by the officers in charge. Just another X marking it.